Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. In the last part we wrapped up the previous 3-day cycle, getting a couple of side quests done along the way, such as the dog racetrack and the swamp spider house. And now it's time for us to start doing some setup for this 3-day cycle. We're gonna get a lot done this time as well, but there's some things we need to get done sooner than others because of time limits and having to do some things every day. But first I need some money, so I'm gonna head over to the bank and withdraw 200 rupees, and then we're gonna meet over in East Clock Town. Because it's time to investigate the only building we actually haven't been into, period, here. This is Honey and Darling's shop. It looks like we have a visitor, Honey. I wonder if it's a customer, Darling. Oh, would you like to play? Today is Bombshoe Gallery Day, isn't it, Darling? One game is 10 rupees. Hit each target with a bomb tune in the time it takes us to dance through one song. But if you fall off this platform, you're out, right, Darling? Are you ready? Start the music. So, this is sort of the follow-up to Bombshoe Bowling from Ocarina. You gotta hit about, I think it's like 8 to 10 targets around the room with bomb shoes. And this is pretty hard to do. It's easiest to predict where the bomb shoe is gonna go when the platform is closer to the ground, just because it takes less time to get up there. But otherwise, this, there's an element of luck to this because bomb shoes, they move relatively consistently, but because of the left and right angles of it, sometimes it feels like there's a bit of a randomness to this as well. I can't give any real good advice to this, besides spamming and hoping it works out. Not helping things, the further you get into the time limit, the faster the platform moves, so any kind of consistency you could have figured out isn't exactly applicable the entire time. This feels like it's mostly luck-based, and in a way it sort of is. If you just try again and again, you should be able to get it eventually. I don't think I've ever, like, lost out on the time limit for this one, because this minigame's only available on day 1. But good luck all the same. I got that real close there, for instance. Did you see that, Honey? He got a perfect score. We have to share our happiness with him, Honey. And we get 50 rupees. That's annoying, so let's show him even more, Darling. Notably, you actually don't get rupees from some of the minigames here in Clock Town in the 3DS release. You instead get fishing hole passes, which in case I haven't mentioned that before, because doing 30-minute long videos means that sometimes my memory of what I brought up isn't exactly the best. That allows you for, I forget if it's a free single round of fishing in the fishing holes around Termina, or if it's free until you leave. I didn't really mess with the fishing in 3DS too much once I realized, oh, it's just Ocarina's fishing back with more varied fish. Cool, no thanks. I guess in that regard, I maybe technically still haven't gotten 100% in Majora's Mask 3DS because I don't care to do fishing. And maybe I will one day. Maybe. It's like me eventually going back to get the rest of the Koroks and all that jazz in Tears. I'll do that eventually, but I blitzed through that game in about 13, 14 days, 120 hours total. I think I played the game more than I slept. With that, though, since it's now the dawn of the first day, we can now tackle the Oceanside Spider House and not have to worry about anything here. Because the annoying thing is, here in the N64 version, your reward for this place depends on what day it is. On the first day, we're gonna get the item we're gonna get. On the second day, you get 50 rupees. And on the third day, you get 20 rupees. This was changed in 3DS to the point where I think you just need to finish it in 1 day period. You get the same reward on all 3 days otherwise, though. And finishing one of these in 1 day is not too big of a deal unless you enter it way too late or early in the day. Notably, in order to finish this particular spider house, though, you do need the hook shot from the Pirate's Fortress, so while you can enter it technically as early as you first get to the Great Bay, you can't finish it until you've at least gone in and gotten that. Not that that takes a lot to go into and grab, considering how fast you can just go get it in specific, but make sure you have it all the same. Mind you, if you're following this as a guide, you do. So what's kind of neat about the Swamp Spider House is that it takes the house part of its name much more literally. This is closer to a giant storage house. And something that is more audible in this particular spider house versus the swamp one is that you can tell how many spiders are roughly left in the room based off, or I guess rather, you can tell if there are spiders left in the room you're in, period, based off the old rustling of the gold sculptures we used to identify their placements in Ocarina. Still only have to get 30 of them, though, but in general, you do need a couple more items for this one in order to get 100% here, because while you don't need certain items to get all the sculptulas, there's another item in here you at least need the Captain's Mask from Ikana Graveyard to get, which is why I've gone through these things in the order I have, by and large. Also notably, if I look like I'm maybe, like, trying to process where things are in this dungeon a little more than usual, by and large, I did not need to practice Majora. It's a game I have pretty well memorized. But this spider house, for some reason, is the one part I probably should have, because I can never remember where, like, 1 or 2 particular spiders are, just because I never think to check them. Like, one I don't grab for a little bit here in this room. I think it's, like, maybe even the last skull shell I grab in this area, period. In this room, basically completely behind me right now, on top of a pile of crates is a jar. There's another gold sculpture in there, so you could leave this particular room's 2-story area with about, I think, 11 to 12 total sculptures. Sometimes things like that also happen where, in case you roll into a jar, you didn't really roll into it at the correct angle to hit it correctly, so the sculptures will not leave because of that. Now, my personal recommendation for how you take this particular spider house on is to actively clear the top floor here first before you head down to the basement area to get more sculptures, barring this main room. Because the secondary item we can get here that I brought up, it's just more convenient to go through this room first for the steps to get that. Welcome to the library. This is a place where I frequently get turned around, not because the library itself is confusing, but because of how you're meant to climb up them. One staircase, I think it's the one that's maybe even on screen right now, has books missing in such a way that you can climb it like it's a ladder. So, sort of similarly to a little bit of a set piece in Minish Cap. But I always forget exactly which one that is. Make sure you use arrows on any of the Skull Kid portraits, because there's also a gold sculpture behind at least 2 of them, I think? And also, hey, it's a stall child. Huh? Ah, Captain, sir, it's been a long time since we've seen you. As you have ordered, sir, we are investigating the secrets of this place. According to the information I've obtained, it seems Red should be shot 6th. Have I fulfilled my duty, sir? Yeah. Ah, thank you, sir. I hope the information I have provided will be assistance to you, sir. Now, as you have ordered, sir, I'll finish the last of my duties. Yes, sir. By dying, apparently. So, there are 6 stall children located throughout this entire area that give you 4 different colors, numbered 1 through 6. Sometimes certain colors won't show up. It's entirely random. This depends, I think, on your save file, similarly to the Bomber's Code. But you're going to want to either memorize or write that down to simplify things moving forward. I, in particular, just usually write down the numbers 1 through 6 and then the first letter of the color in question. For instance, green needs to be shot first on my file here. You don't need to talk to the stall children to get the reward. You can brute force the randomness here. But it's a matter of if you really want to actually put the effort in to do that. I think I've done it on at least 2 playthroughs. And I think I went through almost a full largest quiver of arrows in doing so. So I don't really recommend it for the sake of time. It was more of a question of, how long would it take me to do it? And then I found my answer. I can't quite parse why into words, but something about the Ocean Spider House in specific, out of all the areas in the game, feels very different. Maybe it's the fact it feels like it was a well-lived-in home that's just abandoned due to time, almost like a sort of a Spencer Estate kind of aesthetic, barring the lack of zombies. Although I guess actually with the cell children, maybe not so much. There's just something unique about this place I've always liked, atmosphere-wise. And mainly not for nothing, if you fix this place up, it wouldn't exactly be an awful little house. Sure, you're entirely underground, but bunkers have existed for a while, and you could do a hell of a lot worse than this one. I think these are the sculptures I found last on my first playthrough of this area. Well, it's because there wasn't a big enough indication to me that I could actively push that, Skulltula. If you're playing along and need a good resource to help with the spider houses in case this isn't enough, I would really recommend, honestly, I know it's like the go-to site and for people anyway, but Zelda Dungeon has very good maps for the spider houses that I wish I had growing up first playing the game. Because it actively numbers, like, the Skulltulas and what rooms they're in and all of that. I think it might be partially based off of an old Prima Guides map to an extent, but don't quote me on that because I never actually owned that particular Prima Guide because I, even at the time, heard it was kind of rough. But it's something I wish I had had when I first played through this game, so I would recommend that if you're having trouble. With that, though, from memory, the entire top floor here is cleaned up, so let's now head downstairs and start tackling the 2 rooms down here. And we're gonna start with the room that's closest to the stairs for the sake of convenience, but also because it's easily the more interesting of the 2 rooms. Because in here are the remaining 4 Style Children that give hints for what we need to shoot. In fact, if you noticed, this room's got some particular masks in it on the wall. We need to shoot blue 5th. And if you look at the colors of those masks, we got green, blue, yellow, and red. These masks are what you need to hit in certain orders. You need to shoot them with arrows, yellow 3rd for me, for instance, in order to access the extra secret here in this particular spider house. Let's see. Next up, we need to shoot red 4th. And the final step is from this guy. We need to shoot blue 2nd. So for my playthrough, the order I need to shoot the masks in is green, blue, yellow, red, blue, red. This will be different for you. It is different every playthrough. So mark down whatever you got and you should be fine. With that said, in the case you didn't mark down what the Style Child said in time, you're not out of luck. If you just leave a room and re-enter, I do believe the Style Children respawn. You can just talk to them again to get the hints again. But that said, I am going to focus on getting the Skulltulas in here. And some of the Skulltulas in here I actually took the wrong way to get my first run because they are on top of the chandelier directly above me. I thought I had to shoot them with the arrows or something by standing on top of something else to then use the hook shot to collect them. No, what you need to do is use the Goron mask. And then use the Goron pound. It's like the only time that you actively have to use that for any real purpose besides pushing down switches. And they'll knock them all down. In fact, I'm only just realizing it's more or less a parallel to the, I guess even the reuse of the idea from the tree room over in the swamp spider house where you had to roll into the tree to knock the 3 spiders down. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's probably because they, again, because this game's much shorter than usual development schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like, oh, okay, where do we put these things in? How can we use these mechanics? And they were just like, alright, 2 small spider house dungeons. We'll have maybe this small team handle that, or something like that, I would guess. For now, though, it's time for us to shoot the masks and get our extra reward. Notably, if you mess up the order for the masks, you're not out of luck, you just have to start the pattern from the start again. So say if I shot blue too early, I just have to start back from green. And that's why you can brute force this. It just takes a lot of arrows to do that, to figure out all 6 steps. Because I'm not sure of the math of that, and I don't want to figure it out. Future me, don't waste time trying to figure it out, but like, a 1 in 4 chance, 6 times, that's brute forceable at that point. Either way. And our ultimate reward for doing all that with the Style Children here is another piece of heart. And honestly, for what is left in the game for me, the piece of heart's probably more useful than the other reward we're going to get here. But we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Also, killing the Style Children's pretty good for magic, and you're gonna need some coming up, because you still need to use some fire arrows in the next room. In the long run, I was always very happy with one thing the series started doing with Wind Waker, and I guess not much after that, because elemental arrows didn't really show up again after that. Until, Breath and Tears. And that's that. I always appreciated Wind Waker for going, okay, The elemental arrows aren't a separate item. You just press L and R to access them from the main arrows. I always wished I could do that every playthrough of Majora after I first played Wind Waker. And because of it, it just made Wind Waker feel that much better, at least in terms of just quality of life stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a fan hack, though, for Majora and Ocarina that add that capability in, especially with how in-depth things like the randomizers are nowadays for them. In that regard, that's one thing I really do like about fans. We're willing to actively put effort into patch things into games after the fact. Especially if it's a beloved classic that's like, oh man, this one little quality of life option would have been real nice to have. Like I brought up the randomizers just now with all their choices, but I can also think of, there's several factors for that for the Banjo games. I know there's a couple of those for the Donkey Kong 64 experience. Particularly just being able to swap Kongs at will rather than need to go back to a barrel. Even some of the Mega Man games have that. Like, just recently we had, I think like last year, a Mega Man X3 Director's Cut fan hack come out that not only has a fully playable Zero mode, but also just kind of messes around with some things in the game to make it feel a little better, which is pretty neat. Alright, so if you got the Skulltula I mentioned that I had forgotten earlier, you would now be at 30, you're good to leave. I need to figure out which one that is, and I figured out pretty quickly here as I start scanning through the ones I remember being in the game. And yeah. This room scared me as a kid. I don't know why, there was always something about just empty and desolate storage areas or things like this that were very haunting to me. And part of that probably comes down to Luigi's Mansion being able to scare me as a kid. Because some of the things that game does were intense enough for me to go, at least be like on my toes, not so much like screaming. I think the closest I got to being like that with Luigi's Mansion was when the power cut out, because I was deathly afraid of the dark as a kid. Not so much nowadays, though. Unless I'm in, like, specifically the woods in the dark, which doesn't happen often, but when it does, ugh. On the way out, make sure you have the Goron mask ready, because it's the easiest way to get up this particular sheer incline. In fact, I think it's what you need to do, because I don't think you can hookshot your way up here. And now this dude's here. I thought I heard some loud noise inside, and I came in to check it out. This place, is it some sort of underground shelter? Did you find this place? I beg you, let me have this place. Not for free, of course. I hope this will do. And we got a giant's wallet. This thing is huge. You can hold up to 500 rupees. I'm just glad it was something you needed. Anyhow, I won't be needing it much longer anyway. So yeah, if you're playing the N64 version, you can only get that, I think, on the night of and day of the first day. Dawn of the second day on, you cannot get that. 3DS changed that. You just need to complete it in one day, from my knowledge, which is a very welcome change. The Giant's Wallet is mostly handy for grinding rupees because it means you don't have to visit the bank as often. And buying like a total of 1 or 2 items in total that cost 500, it's not a very needed wallet upgrade. I'd argue that the larger wallets in basically every other 3D Zelda game are more important in the long run. Especially in Wind Waker for reasons, at least in Wind Waker GameCube, both versions of the GameCube version even. HD even less so. For now though, before we head over to the temple, we're gonna travel around the world really quickly and get some setup done. Because something else I'm tackling in this 3-day cycle, I'm going to need certain things in bottles, like the fish. I'm going to need certain amounts of bombs, Deku Nuts, and all that jazz, just to help with setup. Particularly, you need 10 Deku Nuts, and the best way to do that is to travel over here to Woodfall Temple's owl statue, because the one pot next to it is a guaranteed 10. Our next destination is Clocktown, the bomb shop in specific. Because even though I don't need it in exactly the same place, it's just worth it to come here ahead of time and buy yourself a powder keg. Because we're gonna need one to destroy something later on this 3-day cycle, and it's gonna be the last one in the game we need. Again, powder kegs, cool as hell items. Don't really use them too much. For now, our next destination is not only get a couple things from grass in Termina Field, but we want to head towards the southern swamp portion of Termina Field for something I haven't quite shown off in the game yet. I need to actually go back and finish it, though. There's one particular ROM hack of Majora's Mask I think I have somewhere on my computer that I think did, like, a little bit of, like, almost a small trade quest version of a storyline where you go from one place to another pretty quickly, almost like the entire area is one large dungeon. And I seem to recall powder kegs being important in that for its scale. Use an explosive of some sort right here, and you find a hidden hole. There's several holes like this, like in Ocarina. But this is the only one of important here because this one's got 2 cows in it. And if you played Epona's song in front of cows, you get a pretty good benefit. Nice music. That song just makes me want to let go and pour out a lot of milk. I'll give some to you. Milk will make you very healthy. Playing Epona's song to any cow in the game gives you a free bottle of milk, and we're going to need that for later. Our next destination for this little bit of setup is the Southern Swamp Owl statue, because we want to talk to the Deku Scrub merchant over here as a Deku in order to buy ourselves some magic beans. You need 5 of them. In the N64 version, at least. Some of the items I'm getting multiples of, like magic beans, Deku nuts, and bombs. I think the 3DS version will reduce the amount you need for what we're going to eventually use these for later this 3-day cycle. But it's just better to get all 5 now, rather than wait until then. There's a couple of other items we are going to need when it comes to this whole thing, but we'll be able to get those closer to the area in question anyway, so we'll wait until then. But that's not all we're going to be doing for setup right now. There's another side quest we've known about since clearing more or less the second dungeon of the game, several videos ago now, that we can actively complete now that we're in this particular 3-day cycle, due to how we've gone through progression. So our first destination is to put the Goron mask on, and then head over back to Snowhead and take out Goat once again. Because I've already shown the main fight once at normal speed, and then it's sped up again to show us how to do the refights and re-clears, I am just going to cut to the cutscene after we defeated Goat, though, just to save on time. Oh man, that was hard. I've been waiting for you, Dongero. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but it looks like you've lost a little weight. As you can see, Dongero, the long winter has ended and spring has finally come to these mountains. Let us begin with our chorus. Unfortunately, it seems not all of our members have gathered. Perhaps it is because winter was too long. They must not have realized that spring has come to the mountains. And when the great Dongero has come for us too. What a pity. Where in the world could the other members be, and what could they be doing? So, it's time for us to finally talk about these frogs. We've seen several of them throughout the game, and now we can talk to them with Dongero's mask to collect them all in one place. The thing is, in the previous 3-day cycle and the first main 3-day cycle, we couldn't complete this quest because the 5th and final frog we need to talk to was out of our reach. Now that we're in this particular 3-day cycle, not so much. So now let's go and find the frogs. You've actually seen several of them throughout the game already if you've been paying attention, even during the LP itself. The first one is just along the boat tour path here in Southern Swamp. I think if you talk to these frogs when you haven't beaten Goat, they say that the winter's still there, so they won't really go. Ah, Dangaro, it's been so long. What has brought you all this way? Could it be? Has spring finally come to the mountains? Look, it is true! Winter is so long I began to lose all hope. I understand. I shall head for the mountains immediately. So you do, I believe, need to actively fight Goat before you actually start this quest. Not that it's hard, again, because of the teleporters at the start of every dungeon. Refighting the boss fights, by and large, is a very simple task. But it's worth noting all the same. God, that's a horrifying shot of the moon. The next frog's a little bit out of the way in that they are actively within the Woodfall Temple. This is annoying, but thankfully, because of how Woodfall Temple itself is laid out, it doesn't take a long time to get through. You just need to get to this room, hit that eye switch, and come back up here, and head back to the room where we got the boss key here, and refight the gecko and his little snapper buddy. Because you might remember when we defeated this particular mini-boss, it turned into a frog. That is one of the 5 frogs we need. Hey there, little buddy. I must summon you for your calling. Ah, Dongero, it's been so long. What has brought you all this way? Could it be? Has spring finally come to the mountains? Look, it is true. Winter was so long I begin to lose all hope. I understand. I shall head for the mountains immediately. And with that, we are now done with Woodfall Temple. And this is actually where I get to mention something I have not yet. If you play the Song of Soul Ring in a dungeon, it doesn't bring up the quick travel menu. It acts as a quick entrance teleport. This is useful in a couple cases if backtracking to the dungeon itself would take more time than just using this to play with some mechanics here and there. I don't take advantage of it too often, but it's nice to have. Our next frog we saw as early as part 1, right here in the bathing area of Clocktown. This is frog number 4, counting the frog that gave us this quest, and the final frog is only within our reach now. So, it's about time we actively head towards the dungeon. And this is where something that's pretty nice comes in handy. Whenever you activate a dungeon again, the cutscene they play is notably shorter. Same with whenever you clear a dungeon for the second time on, the post-dungeon cutscene is cut short because they know you've seen the full thing already. And they're most likely just doing it to clear it again for hitting some event flags to do certain minigames in certain orders. But we do need to actively play the New Wave Bossa Nova for Lulu again. I don't mind having to do this for the most part. It's really only the dungeon after this one that gets a little bit annoying. And that's mostly because of how that particular area is laid out. But we'll talk more about that in a few parts. The open sea is a great bay if needing your might. Quickly climb onto my back. Alright, and we shall. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 20, we tackle the Great Bay Temple.